This is a podcast about one woman's mission to help entrepreneurs and business owners write better business books. Each week, we tackle your writing excuses, because there are excuses too, and help you beat the blank page of doom so that you can write the book that'll grow your life and your business. Now here's your host, Vicky Fraser.
Hello and welcome to the 1000 Authors Show. I'm Vicky Quinn Fraser and this is Joe Quinn Fraser.
Hello.
Joe Fraser. Hello. It's about 53 degrees C here today and we're basically not cut out for this level of heat, especially in September.
It's going to be a quick one.
I'm trying not to complain because I love summer, but I'm just really hot and my brain's stopped functioning. So it's going to be a good episode. So, what are you reading at the moment, Joe?
I just finished reading The Handmaid's Tale, which is obviously very good. I did read it many, many years ago, probably more as like a teenager.
Sorry, I'm not yawning at you. I'm very hot.
Well, like 10 seconds into the podcast and you're yawning. I think I'd read it when I was a kid. Reading it again as a grown up is interesting. It's good.
Disturbing.
Good book.
It is a good book, isn't it?
Good book. Yes.
I really loved how her writing style kind of mirrored the situation. It's like that being kind of just gently lulled into this way of life, that because it didn't all happen overnight, did it?
No.
And it was just, but the way she wrote it was really soporific, and do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but it was all very close, wasn't it?
Yeah, claustrophobic, and yeah, it was really very good.
Excellent writing. And at the moment, I'm reading The Furthest Shore by Ursula K. Le Guin, which is the second book in the Earthsea trilogy.
Yeah, and we're really sorry about that background noise. This level of fuckery has been going on all day.
So one of our neighbours, I think he spent most of...
No, it's not just been that. It's been a fucking leaf blower. There was a
leaf blower behind us.
Oh, I tell you what, there is a special place reserved in hell for leaf blowers and people who use them. What is the actual point of them? They give me the... So yeah, I'm... it's really hot and there's been this level of noise all day. Anyway, hi. So I'm reading...
What are you reading?
I'm reading Slouching Towards Bethlehem by Joan Didion.
Okay.
Which is a book of essays she wrote for all manner of publications and stuff in the 1960s. And so she's another extremely good writer and observational writer, which I'm really enjoying so far. And I've just started reading The Practice by Seth Godin, which I'm sure I'm going to enjoy because I enjoy all his books, but I have really no comment on it as yet because literally just picked it up. So
cool.
And this week at the Dingle... Oh my gosh, it's all been go because the bats have left. I don't think they ever came.
I don't think they came back this year.
I don't think they did. I think they realised that we were going to be closing down our works for the summer to allow them to breed, and they were like, meh.
We'll go somewhere else.
Yeah, which was really irritating. So we have pulled down the ceiling in the stone room, made a tremendous mess, and then while you and Dad were doing that, I went downstairs and made a tremendous mess in what's going to be the library.
It was absolutely incredibly filthy.
It really was.
100 years of bats in the roof space.
And mice and birds.
Pull down on our heads. Squirrels, birds,
General
all
filth.
kinds of stuff. And then we discovered that...
the boulder of death, the boulder of Damocles.
So the existing ceiling joists were sitting on top of our nice walls. We thought the nice walls went higher.
Stone walls.
Nice stone walls went high up to the roof. They didn't really. They were nice walls where you could see them in the room, and then they were just dry stone, rubbly walls.
Proper rubble? Imagine rubble.
Like rubble, piled up, above our heads, above the doorways, above where we were sleeping.
Right above the doorway was balanced this boulder, which if you're watching...
Boulder.
Yeah, big round boulder, and it was fully 1.5 feet across.
Yeah, it was too big for me to lift.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it up. I couldn't really shift it.
And even two people together on a platform, it was really too busy to lift from height down to... Yeah, so...
But nevertheless, it was mobile and rocking, and you could roll it around and shift it.
And it was right above the doorway.
What?
If it had come off, it would have crashed straight through the ceiling panel and onto the head of whoever was underneath it.
And it would have gone straight through them and straight through the floor below as well.
I'm amazed that we're still alive, frankly.
Jeepers, that's terrifying to find.
Yeah, so we've lime mortared all of that shit back in.
Yeah. We grouted the whole wall and rebuilt that wall. And
If you want to follow these adventures, by the way, you can go to projectdingle.co.uk and read all about this.
Really heavy weekend, though.
Yeah,
Very
I've not
fast.
put that on the blog yet, so if you want to know about that, then you'll have to wait. But yeah, we've also got a lot of cucumbers, like hundreds of cucumbers. My cucumbers have been amazing this year. I feel a little bit sick today because I made myself a cucumber and apple smoothie. And I need a juicer because it was...
Sludge.
It tasted nice. I needed ginger as well. Would have been nice. Anyway, so yeah, we've done a lot of destroying things. Speaking of destroying things, let's undestroy your manuscript.
Okay.
Because that is what this episode of the podcast is all about. You wrote your second draft, now what?
Blimey.
Because following on from episode 269, I know, right?
Which was how long ago?
A few weeks ago.
Okay.
In which we talked you through how to do a structural edit on your book. What's next after you've done your structural edit and you've kind of got it all into order and you know the structure of the thing and all of that kind of stuff. What is next? Because hopefully it's now in the right order and everything makes sense. So this next stage is actually called line editing. And it's all about tone of voice, vibes, writing style with some spelling, grammar, typo checking thrown in.
Okay.
So I just thought today we could run through a few tips for people who are ready to do their second edit.
Okay.
And what they might want to think about. So this is by no means an exhaustive how to line edit your book, but it's just a few things that you might want to think about to get you started.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And maybe something that you might not have thought about before as well, because there's an awful lot of technical how-tos when it comes to editing, and this is how you do this, and this is how and you can go and find that stuff. And, there's plenty of editing guides on the internet, and it's all in the mechanics of editing. But I want you to start by thinking about the main vibe for your book. And how do you want it to feel? And so it can be really helpful to list out authors or books whose vibes you might want to channel. So if you I don't mean copy, but the feeling that you get. And The Handmaid's Tale is a really good example of that. It's that kind of claustrophobic, soporific kind of. And if you're writing a non-fiction book in which you want people to do things, I don't recommend that you channel that particular style of writing. But you might have a passage in the book or a piece of a chapter that you want to channel that vibe for, because you want to vary the pacing and stuff. So think about the feeling that you want to evoke in your book. Currently working with somebody who's writing the most incredible book on woodlands, and it's the way she writes is so beautiful and peaceful, and you can just imagine yourself kind of walking through her glades on a late summer's evening with that golden light. And
nice.
Yeah, so she just evokes that vibe really beautifully. So think about what vibe you might want to channel, and I think that's a really useful way to start when it comes to the next stage of editing, because most people, I don't think, spend much time doing that.
They just kind of write the words.
Yeah, they're just kind of focusing on the words. So I would like people to think about that kind of wider mood, really.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think so. And then I want you to go through the book chapter by chapter and think about the vibe or the feeling for each chapter. So you've kind of done it for the whole book. You've got a mood for the whole book. And now you can go through and do it in smaller chunks. So, what are you feeling as you write? What feelings do you want your reader to feel as they're going through the chapters? And, some chapters are probably going to be more upbeat than others. You're taking people on a journey, and the stories that you write within the chapters as well, you're going to be taking people on a journey with those too. So think about the language that you're using and the feelings that you want to bring out.
You might have dramatic stuff. You might have tense things. You might have get up and get on with it type vibes. You might have all kinds of stuff going on.
Exactly. So that's the thing the second. That's thing the second. And then thing the third, I want you to think about the actual words and phrases that you're using. So think about your signature style. Don't be afraid of using quirky little sayings that are just yours. So, for example, somebody that I'm working with in the Weird and Wonderful Book Society uses the word sausage quite often. So, not a sausage. And I really like that. And that's a quirk of her writing. And that absolutely needs to stay in her book because
that's her.
Because that's her, yeah. And I will quite often I use the word marvopotamus all the time for marvelous, because it's just, and everybody knows what it means when they hear it, if they know anything about me. But that is a word that I use all the time in my writing. So you might have a signature style or a favourite word. when you are putting that stuff in, though, make sure you're not overusing it.
Yes.
Because that can be a little bit, It
can get old.
It can get old. It can get overdone. So you want to be thinking about if a good way to figure out if you're overusing stuff is to read it out loud, because you will notice. And that's the same with anything. So if you'll have tics, like writing tics that you use a lot. So I say at the end of sentences way more than I'm comfortable with. And it's possible to do that kind of thing in your writing as well. So we have these little verbal tics that translate into writing tics, and you want to pull, the odd one is fine, but you want to make sure that they're not staying at the end of every sentence.
You want people to be noticing your writing and not, the
message,
getting the message, not the writing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the writing should be, and this is, this is kind of related. It's like, this is the problem with flowery writing, is that it gets in the way of the message and you notice the writing, and the best writing, you don't notice it because
it's transparent.
Yeah, it is. And it floats the message or the story along, and it evokes a feeling, just like Margaret Atwood did in The Handmaid's Tale. It's like, I deliberately go back and read stuff to look at the writing, but when I'm reading it for fun, I shouldn't notice it. I should just get that feeling that she's trying to put us into, and that picture that she's trying to show us.
Sure.
Another thing to check when you're thinking about the words and phrases you use, are you sounding too much like someone else, which is really easy to do if you're a big admirer of somebody's writing.
Yeah, if you read 20 Terry Pratchett books in a row, the next things you write are going to sound quite a lot like Terry Pratchett. And
that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that's not what you want to be in the final edit of your book, because you want to sound like you. And this is why I'm a big fan of reading a lot of varied stuff and reading a lot of things that you love. And then, I keep a notebook. I've got a notebook right in front of me here, which is, I can show the readers, the listeners, which is great radio, I know. And so, I've just got, that's me copying out phrases and things from books that I've read or articles that I've read or whatever, and I will copy them out by hand and just make a note of why I really liked it, where it came from, that kind of thing. And so in that way I can be like, oh, I remember, David Sedaris said this like this, and I liked it because of this, so how can I bring that into my writing? And that's a really good way to do that. Also, make sure that you're not sounding too corporate or formal, which is a big problem with a lot of first drafts, because your first draft is almost incoherent and it's kind of brain emptying, or it kind of tends to go the other way, in which people are very worried about how they sound, and so they end up sounding very stiff and formal, because they're like, oh, I am now a writer and I need to write this, and it doesn't really sound
to be proper.
Yeah, and so there's probably going to be a mix of both of those things in most first drafts, so just keep an eye out for both of those things. I want your personality to come through in your book. I don't just want to read a robot generated book. I want your quirks to come through. I think that's really important. So you can, as you read through and do your second edit, keep that in mind as well.
Yeah.
Thing the fourth, look at the structure of your sentences and paragraphs. Are they varied and interesting? So if you've got too many long paragraphs, all one after another, it gets really monotonous. If you have too many short ones, it sounds really jittery. And you might want to evoke those feelings, and that's fine, but make sure it's deliberate. And even if you are trying to kind of put across a feeling of, languorous laziness, it still needs to work and not bore people. But generally, if you're just kind of, if you're writing a varied, varying the length of your sentences and your paragraphs is a good rule of thumb, because then you can start playing with it to have a specific effect. And then... Nice. Number 5, think about the rhythm and pace of your writing as well. How are you moving the reader along? So, for example, if you're writing an exciting passage about a car crash, you're going to want the writing to be snappy and pacey, because that's going to carry, carry that feeling through. If you're writing about a lazy Sunday afternoon, it's going to have an entirely different, the rhythm and pace of your writing is going to be entirely different. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Cool.
And then imagery. Are you showing or telling? Don't tell us stuff. Don't tell us what to think and feel. Give us what we need to move ourselves there. Okay. So rather than kind of saying, I don't know, the tent. And this is my favourite Terry Pratchettism of mine as well. The tent was really hot. It's like, well, okay, you're telling me what it was. But if you say to me, the tent had the atmosphere of a blacksmith's armpit, it gives me exactly the same information plus the exact atmosphere and feeling and that claustrophobic, stinky, sticky. Do you know what I mean? So there's a way to, when you put that kind of imagery in, you are showing us an image, and you are helping me to create a picture in my mind of what you want me to see, which is what really good writing does. So there you go.
Nice.
And finally, think about Anne Lamott's 1-inch picture frame or the director's close-up. You know, if you're going to take a piece of your writing and you want to just see, okay, I'm just going to like focus in on this one detail, the most important detail. Think about if a filmmaker was going to make your writing into a film, what would the close-up be? And you can pay attention to this in films and TV shows as well. If there is ever a close-up, guarantee it's there for a reason. It's not just there for fun. So it's like, okay, well, why are they focusing on that thing? What point is it making? And you won't notice it consciously, but it will add to the story of the film and the feeling.
Okay.
So that's a really good idea. You can do that in writing as well. And finally, send it to beta readers you can trust, because they will help you. And we've done a whole episode on how to work with beta readers before, and we'll revisit it again at some point. But that is my advice on how to do your second edit. You got any questions?
Blimey. So you wouldn't be expecting to change the structure at this point because you've gone through your structural edit. I mean, I guess you might. But
Yeah, you might. If you find, when you're doing another pass through, you might be like, oh, you know what, this section doesn't feel like it really fits here. It feels like it's been shoehorned in, at which point you might change it around. But no, the vast majority of the structural stuff will be done by now.
Okay.
But don't feel like you can't make structural changes if it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, cool. Anything else?
What's the takeaway?
The takeaway? I don't know. What do you think the takeaway is? You're asking me because... Okay, so I think the takeaway is don't worry too much about spelling, grammar and typos because a proofreader will sort that out. The takeaway really is to think about the feeling that you want your book to have and the vibe that you want it to have, because once you've got that sorted, it'll make it a lot easier to do the line editing and think about, all of the other stuff that I've just mentioned, the pacing, the words and phrases, the language you use, the imagery, all of that stuff will come from that feeling that you want your book to have.
Okay.
So that is my takeaway. Also, don't panic. Because that's what I've got written down.
Cool.
Coming up next week, we're going to talk about templates. Are they useful or not? Actually, no, that's not true. That's the week after next, because next week I am interviewing my good friend John Holcroft, who is almost done writing his book, and I really enjoyed interviewing him. So,
hi, John.
Hi, John. So that's going to be fab. He's up next week, and then Joe and I will be back the week after to talk about templates.
Sweet.
Yes. So if you have enjoyed this podcast, as always, please go and rate us and review us.
5 stars.
Leave us a review. We'd love to have your reviews. Email me. Tell me things. Tell me about the book that you're writing. Tell me about the editing that you're doing. Ask me questions. I would love to hear your questions because then I can answer them on the podcast. Send us your questions.
Sweet.
And I have templates available. You can, if you're stuck, you can go and get the templates at moxiebooks.co.uk/start your book templates with hyphens. And then the link is in the show notes.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's that, really.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, Joe.
No worries.
Thank you, Podfly, for your patience in waiting for the lateness of the arrival of this episode. You are, as always, doing a splendid job. And Harriet, thank you so much for doing all of the other gubbins around the podcast. You are amazing too. And Joe, thank you for always being awesome and supportive.
You're welcome.
Right. See you next week.
Bye.
And thank you, dear listener, for spending this half hour with us every week, because it's really cool and you've got other things to do. You could be doing anything, but you're listening to us. So thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. You can find links and show notes on the website at moxiebooks.co.uk/podcast, where you can also sign up for the best daily emails in the multiverse and find loads of free resources to help you write your book. We'll be back the same time next week with more tales from the book writing trenches and the latest on what the tiny sheeps have been up to.